My name's Eli Delaney, and I have the honor of meeting some pretty cool people. These are the entrepreneurs, the artists, the creatives, the game changers that are making a positive impact in the people that they meet. And I'm a firm believer that the people that you meet can get you anywhere you want to go. And this show is my way of sharing them with you. It's my way of also helping you meet cool people.
All right, welcome back to another episode of Meet Cool People. Eli here, and today I have one of the coolest gals that I know. I have had the pleasure of hanging out with Melissa Watson. God, probably last 8 months, 6-8 months, something like that. Another Success Champions member. That's how we actually met. I think we actually met at a mixer, and then kind of took it from there. And she's just an awesome, awesome person. So much energy. Such a cool, fun person. And she has some really cool stuff when it comes to how to follow up with people, like her own clients. When she's working with people, prospects and clients, she has her own methodology on how she follows up. And I wanted to share that with her, with everybody, because of the fact that she does it so well. So let me give you a little bit of background real quick before I bring her in. Melissa is a teacher, coach, counselor. She's been that way for over 16 years. She's been a business development and project manager for the last 1.5 years. She still loves teaching, speaking, and seeing people's light bulb moments, which we all do if we are in that teaching mindset. And of course, she enjoys family activities, animal rescue. So another thing right after my own heart, and gardening and travel. So with that, Melissa, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
So you got all kinds of fun stuff going on in your life. Give us a little bit more, like, what did I miss? What did I not talk about in your history?
Oh, goodness. Yeah. So I am a native Louisianian. I'm going to take it all the way back to the beginning. So I did not grow up here. And, Texas for me was a love-hate relationship at the beginning. Now I definitely call it home, but I grew up in Louisiana, like I said, about 30 minutes north of New Orleans. And so I still definitely miss the seafood aspect, but my family's here now. I'm raising my kids here. And, so I guess I can say I love Texas now, but even though those words are hard to come out, but yeah, so Texas is home.
That is awesome, and it is cool. I mean, it's there are things about everywhere. I was talking to somebody even earlier today about that. That's like, you find what's home for you, and you can miss things about someplace else, but you can still, if you find where it is, like me moving here to the Dallas area. And let me rephrase that, the Dallas-Fort Worth area, because I know
yes,
somebody in our group is going to listen to that, and I'm going to get my head bitten off for it. When you like moving here, it's like, it's still exciting for me because it's like, there's so much to do. And I have met some of the most amazing people, both entrepreneurs and just people that I've met at events and things like that. And it's just so much fun. Do I miss, things from my previous places? Of course I do. I came from Portland originally, which has the most beautiful hiking trails out there. I mean, we've got Multnomah Falls, which is the second largest waterfall in the country. And that used to be 15 minutes from my house, by the way. I mean, it was just beautiful. Yeah. And then there was the people, and they just ruined it. But it's just, but I come here and it's like, it's been so much fun. And I've met some of the coolest people, which, like you, I mean, great example of that. He's like, you and I met, I actually remember where we met. We met at the truck yard, the very first truck yard event that I went to, which I don't know if you were a member or you were just looking at being a member or something. Okay. I don't know.
I think I probably was. But yeah, that's been a while.
Yeah. Well, and at the time, I was part of a totally separate group.
Yeah.
So I didn't know most of the people. I don't think I actually knew anybody in that room except for Jeffrey at that point. And so I'm like, okay, totally out of my environment, didn't know anybody. And you were one of the first people that I got a chance to talk to. And like, we hit it off immediately. So it's good. It's good to say that we've gotten to become friends ever since.
Absolutely. I think cool people just attract cool people. And so that's been one of my favorite things about networking and then SEN in general, just getting to meet awesome people.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the cool things. And in your job, you're meeting a lot of people and you're talking to a lot of people. And one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on board and share today was because not just because you're cool, because you definitely fit the bill on that one, But you spoke at the Champion Summit, was it like May or something like that? Yeah. And the presentation you did was talking about following up and basically, more importantly, following up without being annoying.
Yeah.
And I loved what you shared there. So give me a little bit of background of where you came up with the idea of like what you do in your day to day as far as how you're following up with your prospects.
Sure. So yeah, so when I was asked to speak about it, they kind of just left a topic wide open and just said, we're going to talk about prospecting. And I thought, all right, well, what do I know about prospecting? And so I really tried to make something that people could grab hold of and start implementing day one. So like you mentioned, former educator, one of my biggest irritants is the meeting just for a sake of a meeting. And especially if people have, paid to show up and are expecting to hear something great, I want to give them something great. So I really tried to think back to when I was just learning and just entering this field after being in education for so long. What key takeaways or what things have I learned along the way, sometimes the hard way, and let me give that to somebody. And so maybe they don't have to repeat the same mistakes I did, or they can improve upon their processes. And so definitely some of those things about building relationships and coming across as human really help make that a lasting relationship, or the start of a lasting relationship, depending on how much you pour into it. Because the thing that you don't want is just to walk into some place or call somebody over the phone and immediately start pitch slapping them. And, and then especially if you're expecting to follow up, they're going to block your phone call real fast. So just again, like you said, kind of that slow drip of making sure that you're being intentional with what you say and how you say it and how often you say it.
Yeah. And you brought up something very important, still being human.
Yeah.
That's one of the things, like, you know me, I'm preaching this stuff all the time, but it is such a powerful thing that so many people forget. It's like, yeah, we're in business. We need to make sales. We got to pay our bills. We got rent to pay, all that kind of fun stuff, or not so fun stuff. But the reality is that people buy from people they know, like, and trust.
Yep.
And that, I think that's one of the things that a lot of times people forget. And I always talk about this, like, people buy from who they know, like, and trust. And by the way, those three words are there in that order for a reason, because they have to get to know you before they can decide if they like you. Then they usually decide if they trust you or not. And a lot of times people don't get that. They skip that part. Or they try to get it out of order even. I always joke about the fact that doctors and attorneys are the only ones that get away without having that like factor. They can bypass that. The rest of us have to work for it.
Yeah, exactly. Well, and I think too, the part about, yes, we all have an end goal of wanting a new client or wanting to convert a prospective client into one that buys something from you. But you have to kind of think about and be a little empathetic towards them. It's not just about that. You want them to then pass your name along to somebody else and say, oh my gosh, I had such a great experience with this person. And I want to tell everybody else that finds themselves in need of that service or that product about this person that I really enjoyed getting to work with.
Yeah. And I love the fact that you come at it from that standpoint. It's again, it's a lot of the stuff that I talk about, and it's like, okay, come on, people, this is what we need to be doing.
Yep.
And now, so how long have you been in quote unquote sales?
So about a year and a half. So
okay.
I left education in June of 23 and started this job the week after my contract with my school district ended. So I've been, doing this for about a year and a half now, and definitely learned lots and lots.
Right. So for somebody else that's just starting out, because the great thing is you're at that cool point where you've just had a whole bunch of that learning curve, because it's first year to 2 years, that's pure learning curve, right?
Yes.
After that, then you get to that point where it's like, and this happens with everybody. So I'm not calling you out specifically. No. Everybody gets that point where they think they know everything for, usually about year 3, they start hitting that point. So you're at that sweet spot right now. And I would love for you to share that journey a bit. When you first started, and there's like, okay, I got to make sales. And by the way, I want to put this out there so people understand, because you and I were talking about this earlier. You are commission, meaning you eat what you kill, right? And that's where a lot of times we all have to stop and think about this. It's like, this is a very different game. And so many people, especially when they leave a job and they have to go out, and then if they get into something that's commission, and commission could be commission sales, starting your own business from scratch, it's the same thing, right? You gotta put it out there. When you first started out, what were some of the things that you found yourself doing that weren't like, you're like, oh, wait a minute, I should have done that differently when I first started? Because I bet that would be helpful for people.
Yeah. So I think whenever you're talking to somebody and they're not immediately dismissive, but as the conversation is going along, even if it's a good conversation, not asking for the follow up, so to speak. So maybe it's they're not ready now, but saying, okay, I'm going to follow up with you in a week or two, or I would love the opportunity to talk about this further after you've had more time to process it. And immediately just being like, okay, and backing off and never kind of circling back. Or if, I found out, hey, they went with another roofing company, asking some questions, because just because they tell you they chose somebody else doesn't mean they really chose somebody else. And so, I think social graces kind of come in, and how you've been taught to behave and react when somebody tells you no, in an essence, especially as a female in a male dominated industry. And so I think getting over that hurdle probably was one of the biggest challenges, because that's not my typical nature to do that.
Mm-hmm. Right. Well, I think it's really important. The second part you said is like, because you're not sure if they actually did choose somebody, but I think that a lot of times people miss the opportunity to ask why.
Yeah.
Like, what was that? Because even if they did choose somebody else and you didn't get the deal, which happens, it happens to everybody, by the way, you can learn from that. You can learn what was the deciding factor that made them make that switch. What was it that chose that person over you? Sometimes you're going to find it's super simple, and it's like, they didn't like your personality. They didn't like my glasses, whatever. It doesn't matter what it is. But there's a lot of times where you'll find out that there's just something that you said or something you didn't say that you need to be aware of, and you can utilize that next time. And
Absolutely.
So you become better in that process. So I love that you were thinking about that, because so many people don't do that. And I think that quote unquote exit interview is actually really kind of important, just to get that idea of like, okay, so why did they choose somebody else? Because maybe it is a simple, hey, I need to change this thing. Or maybe you realize, nope, I just saved myself that extra bullet because of the fact that person was just a jerk and they didn't like the clothes that I wore that day.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because it happens.
Yeah. Asking for feedback, it puts you in this vulnerable position, but I think you have more to gain from it than you do to lose by it. And so it's just being okay with being uncomfortable and having, a somewhat of a little bit of an awkward conversation, or can be. And sometimes the answer is, I don't know, I'm just going with them. And and then doing like, okay, well, what do I do with that? Right. Should I have said some more things up front, maybe to put them at ease, or something along those lines? So whatever you learn, I think is valuable information, even if it's, I'm glad they didn't choose me, because they would have been a handful to work with.
Yeah. Well, we've had those before. I've had some of those before. So I know it's great when you find that kind of person, and you're like, okay, well, that's bye-bye. I'm happy to see you go. And it's cool when you go through. You also said something I think is good to kind of just point out, is like, sometimes it's just a gut feeling, and that's okay too. For me, I actually tend to be the one that I'm lucky in this aspect, that a lot of people that do choose to work with me, that is actually their reason. Is like, I know your stuff because I saw you speak or whatever, but I just felt like I needed to work with you.
Yeah.
And I've had people actually, like, they weren't even really sure what I did, because the presentation happened to it wasn't like a sales pitch. So it was like a little bit on the vague side, useful information, but it's like, okay, so what do you actually sell? And they're coming to me asking that. They're like, so I feel like I need to work with you. What does that look like? And what is it you actually sell?
Yeah.
And I'm just like, oh, I should probably explain that a little bit better now, huh?
Yeah, but then that totally opens the door for you just to talk about all the more remarkable stuff that you do, right? And they're expecting the pitch at that point because they've opened the door for it. So then you can kind of turn from, okay, I won them over with this humanness side of me, and now I can really get to what I'm passionate about and what I do for a living, and they're expecting that too.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's great when you can have that feeling. And I mean, and I've had it multiple times. So it's weird when you have that. I have one client that she's with me today. And it was so funny when I first met her. She was like, we were on a virtual event that I was speaking at. So it wasn't even an in-person thing. And we ended up getting in a breakout room together, which was even better because then she was like, I was so glad I got in this room because I wanted to talk to you. And she's like, I really want to, I want to talk to you more. I was like, okay, well, here's my calendar. I gave her my calendar link and we get on the call and she was like, so I'm still not entirely sure what exactly it is you do, but I feel like I need to work with you. So can you tell me what that is? I'm like, she's ready to pay me and she doesn't even know what it is I do. That's a cool place to be. You know?
Absolutely.
So that is very cool. So now that actually, before I ask this question, I want to ask another one. What did you do to become a better salesperson? Where, was it books? Was it courses? Was it just following somebody else around that was a mentor? What was it that got you into that position?
I think it was kind of multifaceted. So definitely SCN has helped with that. So, but before I knew what networking was, but I just thought, all right, I'm going to walk into a room full of people. I'm going to hand out some business cards. And I really didn't give it much thought after that. I guess I kind of thought that, people would just call and magic would just happen. I don't know. I didn't really think about it after that. And so learning the processes and then surrounding yourself with people that have been successful in this role for a lot longer than you have. So yes, some of that is book knowledge, but some of it is just seeing, okay, this is how somebody else does it. And maybe kind of tweaking that to fit my personality and my strengths a little bit, talking and having candid conversations with people about what I did, what I could do better next time, and kind of replaying some of those conversations that I've had with prospects that didn't go well and saying, okay, this is what I said, this is what they said, what else could I have done or what else should I have done, and using it as a learning experience.
No, and I love that. And the cool thing is like now we're in this world where we're doing so much business over Zoom. We record the calls. And so you can actually go back and literally it's like watch the play.
Yes. And watch your facial expressions and all the nonverbal signals that you're sending and all of that. Yeah.
Like, oh yeah. Well, they were talking right there. I had that really funny look at where my eyebrow goes funky. I probably should have been paying more attention to not make that deer in the headlights look. Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and I think, you brought up the fact you're, being around other successful people and seeing what they're doing and learning. And you brought up one specific thing I want to touch on, and I'd like to expand on this, is seeing what they did and seeing how that works and tweaking it for your personality. Mm-hmm. Because so many people, especially when it comes, for some reason, especially when it comes to sales training, they literally just took like word for word to the letter of exactly what it is. And, there's a lot of stuff out there, everything from, professional sales training. There's groups like Sandler, which I know we're both familiar with because of Donnie and Tim both. Yeah. Tim's such an awesome dude. He really is.
Yeah, love him.
Donnie's okay too. Yeah. I still torment over the fact that he was like, when I first started the podcast, I was like, you should be a guest. He's like, go do 100 episodes and come back. I'm like, I may not even want you by then.
What number are you at though?
This, I think, let me see, this is going to be it's going to be right in the 50 range.
Okay.
So I think yours might be 51, 52. Okay. I'm going through some edits over the last few that we did over the Babs event.
Yeah.
And so, you're going to be right in that area. So, I may outgrow him by the time I get there. But so when it comes to sales training, people tend to it's like go to the letter of like, okay, when they say this, I need to say that. And I think that that's something you've done a great job of, obviously, because I can see where your success is, and I can see I know because of the way you talk that you interject your personality into everything. So you're switching it up to okay, here's the idea. Now let me make it mine. Can you explain a bit more of how that works for you?
Yeah. And so I think that a lot of times people, they learn something and it says, okay, I have to do A, then I have to do B, then I have to do C. And I think really what helped me is my background as a teacher and being in front of kids, parents, staff members, just various diverse audiences. It's if you're doing A plus B plus C, and making it follow this linear process, you're losing something. And it's usually the engagement. And that's really what sales is. It's about the engagement and how you're engaging with that prospect or that client. And so I learned pretty darn quickly that, and for me, it was riding along with other people that do the same job within my company, seeing how they interact with their offices that they go to and their pop buys and things like that. And then gleaning from that, okay, I really like this. That might not work for me because that's really towards their personality, but I really like the end result of that. So how can I then construe that into when I go into my offices and kind of make it my own? Because I feel like people are really perceptive, especially once they get to kind of interact with you a couple of times, and they can pick up on the bullshit. And so if you're just about a process with them, eventually it's going to show through and it's going to be really off-putting. So being authentic to yourself from the jump, I think, is really the way to go, because then you don't have to worry about, what kind of you put on that first time. You're just showing up as yourself. And that's a really cool space to be able to be in, because then they want to do business because of you, not because necessarily of a process that you followed, although that does have something to do with it.
No, I love that. And it is cool because having the process, I always tell people, and this is in any system or formula or anything in life in general, whether it's business or not, you got to know the rules and then you learn to break the rules.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things I think it's really, really cool to be able to do that and to see where that goes. Like, as an example, there's a lot of stuff that I do that I actually found out after the fact was I did it purely just on my own without realizing, was actually right out of NLP playbooks.
Yeah.
And I always found it funny because people would come up to me that knew NLP and they're like, so I saw what you did there. I was like, huh? I had no clue. And I had actually figured at the time, I didn't even know what NLP was at all. Yeah. By the way, anybody who doesn't know neuro-linguistic programming, there's a whole thing behind it. We don't have time to go down to the deep dive of that rabbit hole, but it's cool when you figure that out, because then you can be more intentional about what you're doing but still keep your personality into it. I think you just said something really important with that, because like for me, I'm intentional about every little thing that I do. Like every process of my follow-up system and the words that I say when I talk on stage, when I'm talking on a podcast, anything like that, I'm already thinking 3 steps ahead before I'm saying those words. That is called being strategic. And, part of my primary personality is strategic. That's where I think. Mm-hmm. However, just because you have the strategy and you're intentional about it does not mean it needs to be cold and robotic.
Yeah.
And I think that's a really big thing. You just hit on that of like, if you're going to you did the Popeyes and mm-hmm. It's like, okay, now for some of us, we're in the internet marketing space. We're not doing that. We're not walking into somebody's office or whatever. Yeah. We're just, I do a lot of emails. Okay? That's my number one thing. I do social media stuff, but those things like popping in and just saying, hey, haven't heard from you in a while. Just wanted to check in. How you doing? Yeah. It's super simple. It's not, hey, are you ready to buy yet? Yeah. And a lot of times I'll be like, hey, I read this book. I thought it was really cool. I thought you might find it helpful. Here's a link. Yeah. Check it out. And, I mean, this is stuff that I literally teach to my clients, but it's like, you can do this in so many different aspects. And if you're in a more brick and mortar type of business, walk in the door every once in a while and just say, hey, you know what? I thought this was helpful. I wanted to bring you a copy of this book, or I want to just pop in. I happen to be checking up on so-and-so up the street. Just want to pop in and say, hi, how you doing? What's new and exciting?
Yep.
And the great thing is the attitude, just all of a sudden the walls go down because they're expecting you to pitch. And when you don't pitch, they're like, huh, okay, well, maybe you should, maybe she is kind of cool, right?
Yeah. And I think that's, something that I learned really early on too, by shadowing people, is most of the time when people are going into an office, they're not talking about roofing, oh, hey, how are your, kiddos doing?
Mm-hmm.
I'll know the kids by name, or, getting to memorize people's names, or even the little things of, I've talked to somebody one time, a homeowner called me, I've talked to them one time, I save them in my phone with their name. So the next time they call me, I'm like, oh, hi, Josie. And so many people do exactly what you just did of, oh, or they laugh and say, oh, you remember me? Well, yeah, I do, and so it's those little things that you do that really make a huge impression upon people. And I'm always a fan of seeing somebody face to face, because just for my personality, I think it's just better for me to see somebody in person and to be able to smile and ask them how they're doing, to give them something, food or whatever. And so you just have to realize, what your strengths are, and then how you can play up those so it works to your advantage.
Yeah, definitely. And I do agree that in person is always the best. That is the best way. Like, the one difference is, for me, most of my stuff has been in the online space for so long. And I deal with clients that are all over the country, sometimes even the globe. So popping in isn't quite as easy for that kind of situation.
Yeah.
We were talking about a client that I had out of Australia at one point. It's like, I can't just pop in and say hi.
Yeah.
So was it like a 19-hour flight or something like that? But it's kind of cool when you do that. And I always, like, one of the things that I do is, like, if I meet somebody, I have a whole process, and you've seen it. You've been part of this. I have my digital business card, and I have them to download my information. And then I also make sure that I get their information. It all goes into my phone. So if I call them, my shining face is showing up with the purple background, all that kind of stuff. So they know exactly who it is. And when they call me, I got exactly the same thing, because that all goes into my phone.
Yep.
And it's cool because you just said this. I had people where they call me, I pick up the phone, and it's like, hey, Melissa, how you doing? They're like, huh? They get stuck because they don't realize that. Oh yeah. Cause normally it would be a hello, because they're expecting a sales call, right? They're expecting some random spammer to be calling them, because that's all we get normally anymore.
Yep.
And so it's it's cool when you do that. And so I love that you're doing that as well, because so many people miss the boat on these little details. That's what we're talking about. Little details. We're not talking about anything complicated.
Yeah.
So I love that. So what else, as you're growing and as you're getting better at this whole process, what are some of the other things that you think are really important that people should be paying attention to?
So I really think, like you said, it is those little things, those little moments, but not being disheartened if it's a long game. And so I'll give you an example. I have an insurance office that I go into, and I've been going probably for about a year now. I try to go to all my offices once a month. And the person in there and I have a really good relationship. Anytime I go into that office, we're talking for at least 30 minutes, and really, again, not about roofing, just about how they're doing in their life. And, and it's a reciprocal relationship. But they've said, I really wish I could send some business your way. We just haven't had anybody needing a replacement. I'm like, cool, that's fine. I'm still going to continue to nurture that relationship. But I appreciate them saying that, because I think they want to show that they recognize that I'm putting forth time, energy, and effort, and they don't want to feel like I'm giving, and they're not giving anything back. But sometimes people don't say that, but it's still not being disheartened just because it doesn't come within, your first visit or your first phone call or as quickly as you think it should on your timeline, not theirs.
Yeah. And I think what you just said is so, so critical. So I'll share a story. I had a client who, funny, it's like they became a client a little over a year ago. I met them when I started my first business back in 95.
Oh, wow.
And we've known each other forever. Mm-hmm. And they were just never in the right position to be a client of mine. Just didn't fit. We've still stayed in touch. I've moved to 2 different states since then. And they posted something on social media, like I said, a little over a year ago, and they were struggling with something. I don't remember specifically what it was. And I was like, okay, so try this and this. I just, gave her some advice, and then was like, you know what, you know how to get a hold of me. This is what I do. Let's talk.
Yeah.
And they ended up getting on my calendar and ended up becoming a client.
Yeah. And talk about a long game.
Talk about a long game. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and that's the fun thing about it is like, I always tell this story from stage is that I had a client who came to me. It was September 16th of 2020. I remember the date because he replies to one of my emails. He says, "Hey, Eli, I've been on your list for a couple of years now. My son's starting a construction company and we're wondering if you can help us with some marketing stuff. You've done so much to help me in my business over the last couple of years. I can't thank you enough." And I was like, cool, thank you so much. That makes me feel good. And I'm super excited about it. Well, I go into my CRM and I look as okay, what does a couple of years mean? He had actually seen me speak July 3rd, 2010.
Oh, wow.
So 10 years and 3 months later, he's coming back to refer his son's business to me.
Yep.
And that's the stuff that we're talking about here is that stay in front of them consistently. Always make sure you're top of mind, without being annoying, without being the pest, and without always without commission breath.
Yes, I love that. Yes. I'm going to steal that and use it.
Oh, go for it. I didn't make it up, so feel free to use it all you want.
I love that. I love that.
Awesome.
Yeah, but how many people give up after, you talk to somebody 2 or 3 times and then they just walk away and say, okay, on to the next transaction. And that's the thing that I think sets, the salespeople, when they put sales first versus they put the relationship or the humanness first is the longevity and the grit, how long you're willing to stick with somebody when you don't get those immediate results. But it's usually such a bigger payoff in the long run if you would just stick with it.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And I love that you shared your story there with the gal who said, I'd love to send some business your way. I just don't have anything. Yeah. I think that's cool because, you said that not everybody's going to say something like that. Most won't. Yeah. Most aren't going to say anything with it. But when you get that, it's cool because they will when they're ready, when it happens. And you never know when that's going to happen, just like we just talked about.
Yeah.
Awesome. Okay. So we are getting close to time here. So any last tidbits, nuggets, anything you want to share before we start wrapping up here?
I would just say and encourage, anybody that kind of finds themselves, especially in a commission only role, is, be cognizant of the amount of time, energy, and effort you're pouring in to someone, and make sure that they are also, especially if it's a networking group, make sure that they are willing to reciprocate that. Because I think so many times you can want to stick around for maybe the wrong reasons, or sticking around in a group that you shouldn't be. And so making sure that, yes, you want to help people out, but you're also surrounding yourself with people that want to help you out. And that's not from a client or a prospect perspective. That's truly just who you're surrounding yourself with, making sure that that's a reciprocal relationship.
Love it. Love it. Love it. Great, great final thoughts there. And I couldn't agree more. Sometimes you're going to hang out in groups. Some of it's for business, some of it's direct clients, but a lot of times it's worth it to hang out for the people that are just there to support you.
Yeah. For
Awesome.
sure.
Very cool. Okay. So 2 final questions. Last one's going to be the easy one. That's how people can get a hold of you. But before that, this is the Meet Cool People show. So what do the words meet cool people mean to you?
Meet cool people. That means people, kind of like I just said, that really truly have your best interest at heart, but that you can glean something from. So maybe you're teaching them a thing or two too, but really everything that they're sharing is really to better you and in your endeavors, whether it be personal or business, and making sure that you hold on tight and cling tight to those people.
Words of wisdom. Love it. Awesome. Okay. So how do people get a hold of you?
LinkedIn is probably the easiest way. It's Melissa Watson Proco is my little hashtag or URL. And all my contact information is on there.
Awesome. And we'll be sure to put it in the show notes as well. So Melissa, thank you so much for coming and hanging out today. I knew we were going to have a good time.
My first podcast, and it was very painless. Thanks, Eli.
Very good. If nothing else, that makes my day. I love it. Awesome. All right, everybody, get out there. Have an amazing, amazing rest of the week. And if there's anything I can do to help you out, reach out. Let me know. Take care.
And that wraps up another Meet Cool People show. Now, if you like what you heard, be sure to give us a like, subscribe, or review so I can help introduce these amazing cool people to even more amazing cool people. And just remember, meeting cool people is just the beginning. You need to have a system in place to follow up with the amazing people that you meet. This is exactly what we do for our clients. If you'd like to see if my team and I can help you, go to followuprockstar.com and check out the case study video to see exactly how we're helping our clients turn casual connections into cash clients for life. Again, go to followuprockstar.com and we'll see how we can work together to turn you into a follow-up rockstar.